We are live. All right. So I am Charlie from Sogokaku. Today we're joined by one half of one of the best podcasts out there, the We Are Rizin Podcast. We have Andrew here. Next time we'll have to get Christian on here to keep you guys from getting jealous with each other. Also joined by one of Deep Jewel's up-and-coming fighters, Anouk.
Oh.
Today we're going to talk about the Deep Jewel's 36 card. I thought the Deep Jewel's 36 card was so good that I thought it warranted actually being discussed in like a more lengthy discussion, because when the event was first announced and all the fights were revealed, I thought every fight on it seemed pretty good, and altogether it's probably the best Deep Jewel's card I can think of in a very long time, if not the best. And so, Anouk, you've had a chance to watch it. What do you think of the event overall?
Yeah, it was like when I watched it, I thought the level was very high, like just overall watching it. There's a lot of fighters, like for instance, Nakairing and like some of the bigger names who, yeah. And also people who haven't fought in a while coming, who made a comeback. So I felt like there's like a really like a kind of a mix of like people with like lots of experience, which raised the level way up, and then also the other half of the people were like people who are like maybe don't have so much experience but are like really skilled up and coming fighters. So yeah, just really lots of interesting fights.
Was there a fight when you saw the event was announced that kind of stood out to you?
Well, for me personally, I really like Hime as a fighter. So I was really interesting to see how she would do against Saori Oshima, because like Saori Oshima is like a two-time champion, and like Hime is, of course, she was, how to say, hyped, but I don't mean that in a bad way, but like she did very well for her first few fights after her debut, so people had high expectations. And then she fought against Motonomiki and she lost. So people were like, oh, maybe it was too early for her. So I was like, whoa. So then after that fight, they're matching her against Saori Oshima. I thought it was very interesting, like kind of unexpected. So that was one that kind of really interested me when it was announced. I was like, I need to see her.
That's an interesting choice, because Hime was a former semi-professional basketball player. So she's one of those fighters that has no MMA background, but she clearly is very athletic. Like, she moves very well. It's kind of surprising to see that she doesn't have an MMA background. What about you, Andrew? Was there a fight when it was announced that kind of stood out to you?
I think you said it best. This card was just so intriguing from like just the names they have on it. Not also certainly having Ring Nakai, regardless of like, I know what you think of Ring Nakai as a fighter, how she failed in USC. You can't deny the fact that like she really is a legitimate like draw for like people who for multitude of reasons, I'll say. I mean, even I think we talked about it on our podcast, that the big mistake that or some point that Deep Jewel's, when they're having the weigh-ins, had they not screwed up the weigh-in live stream, as soon as Ring Nakai was doing her weigh-ins, they probably would have had probably could have crossed into six figures for their.
Because I agree with you 100%. Going into the lead up to this fight, if you look at if you go to the Pancrase YouTube channel, like a majority, like if you look at the top 20 videos of all time, I think 15 of them are Rin Nakai. And that was from way back before Japanese MMA was kind of going through like a YouTube boom where everyone is obsessed with YouTube. So she draws giant YouTube numbers when she's on. I feel like I need to tell Deep Jewel's, like, have a backup camera, like have Gon Kakutogi also film the weigh-ins just in case something happens.
That's another thing, is that I gotta say, whether it's Mikuru or Kai, the fact that finally Japan has embraced YouTube and not become so afraid of it, I'm so glad that like we can now watch these shows like, of Deep shoots. Because remember, Deep used to like occasionally do shows on YouTube, and then they would have like It would be like random. They would have some shows, and then there would be like, if it wasn't, they would upload it a month later, and they wouldn't even title it correctly. Sometimes it would be like 123.mov or something. They wouldn't even title it correctly. I'm glad that they're like getting on it.
Well, I think you're right. I think they used to do it on YouTube, and then they briefly did it on. They did like pay-per-views on Ustream, which was like a while back. But I think they've always kind of had problems with copyrights. I think Japanese copyright law is really strict.
Yeah.
I think Rising had the same problem with the first Landmark show. And so that's why you always hear the same music and stuff on the Deep Jewel stuff. But then that kind of died away. I think it was a little too early. I think people weren't watching it enough. But now that Rising has made it really popular, I think Deep is kind of trying to copy some of Rising's success, and they've produced some really good YouTube content recently. They also have like some really good like behind the scenes footage now, which I like a lot. And they've been doing some like pre-fight videos and VTRs that are really cool as well. So Deep Jewels and Deep, of the 3 local promotions, I think they did the best during the pandemic. Pancrase kind of went into hibernation, and Shuto became like one championship servant kind of situation.
I actually didn't even know that Shuto was still that. I didn't even know that Shuto was started running again. I legitimately did not know that until like, well, it was a few months ago. I thought that they were still not running. I thought they had that like the road to 1FC things, which I don't consider Shuto. I don't guess that's like, it's an offshoot. That to me is not Shuto classic.
Now hopefully things change because they're no longer affiliated with one championship. And hopefully we get some of the old, because Shuto used to be awesome. They used to have like, Horiguchi is from Shuto. Ayaka Hamasaki got her start in Shuto. I think Saudi Oshima got her start in Shuto. Kana Asakura got her start.
But also that was a different era. That was a different, I guess maybe even different people running it. Like this Shuto was like totally like different in terms of who's running it and all that. Same thing, Pancrase, it's no longer Suzuki and Funaki, as far as I know. I forgot the guy's name, but Shigeru Sagai has been with Deep, I think, since the beginning. That's been his baby.
Yeah. Plus, he's got his old history. I think he used to be the PR guy for Pride. So he's been involved in MMA forever.
I didn't answer your question in terms of fights that I'm looking forward to. Listen, I was so curious about Manhoof returning. Just from that long layoff and her being almost 50 years old. It's kind of, I was really like looking forward to that because listen, I like the comeback story, especially when you're close to geriatric age.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, when I saw her age, I was like, wait, 49.
Hey,
my gosh.
Better at 49 than I'll ever look.
I mean, yeah.
Hey, look at Miyu Yamamoto. Listen, they're close in age.
Like, I think Manhoof's actually married to a famous MMA fighter as well. I can't remember who at the moment. It all blurs together. All right, so let's get into it. So sorry, my dog is making a noise. You hear that?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So the first fight, Mizuki Furuse was in the opening fight. She used to headline these events, and that just tells you the caliber of this card, that the opening fight is already one of their stars. Like Mizuki Furuse comes back to her winning ways against Reina Kobayashi. Thoughts, Anouk?
I have to say I haven't seen much of Reina Kobayashi. I know she was in amateur until relatively recently. So I don't really have any strong impression of her. Miki Furuse, like when I saw her fight, like the first thing that stood out was like her fighting spirit. She like really went for it. Like she just like went and didn't stop, like you could really see like she wanted to win. And I really think that just eventually just made her, get the finish basically.
Yeah, you can kind of tell that it looked like she was hungry for a win because she's coming off of a couple losses. So it's obviously a big moment for her.
Yeah, like after she won, also like the emotions were like, oh my gosh, like she really seemed relieved, which I, like you say, I can understand because after being on a losing streak.
Right.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on the fight, Andrew?
First, I gotta correct you. That is MMA prospect, according to Rizin's biography of her, Mizuki Furuse. Despite her having a record, I think at the time she fought Kana, maybe 7-9 or 7-8, maybe even.
No, she was positive back then. She had a positive record.
So Kana's one who screwed it up.
But yeah, I don't think anyone over 10 fights is a prospect anymore. I think Rizin kind of messed that up.
I mean, here's the thing, about Mizuki is that I mean, I hate to say it because she's like, how old is she? 22, 23. She's very young.
I think she's younger than that. I think she's very young. You're right though.
She is like, I guess if there's a gatekeeper for deep atom weight or maybe just the atom weight division in Japan, that is her. I looked at her record. She's lost to like the top people, but then she'll beat like the not so good people, I guess. So like she seems to be the tip, you said she's popular, like apparently like her merchandise sells out. So I guess that's why like she's around. I mean, based on her record alone, you think like, why would you keep a fighter like that? But obviously she's popular. She won this fight against a fighter who was, what was it, 1-0 or 2-1 or something? It was like something like very.
Yeah, Rena Kobayashi was like super active in amateur. I think she had 4 amateur fights last year.
Okay.
So she was.
So I guess in that case, Mizuki, I'm glad she got the win. But the thing is that like whoever you face next, I mean, like I don't know who she's gonna fight next. It's very, if it's somebody who's high level, I wouldn't put it past to that she loses. It's just somebody who's low level, probably will beat them.
I think the thing with Mizuki is she's small. She's incredibly small. And this fight was actually at microweight, I believe. And I'd like to see her stay at microweight because they're actually kind of working on the division because at the next Deep Jewels card, I think Chibasai is facing off against Momoka, the girl that was famous because she got robbed or stopped a fight at a convenience store and it made the news.
Really?
But yeah, she's like a former, they always talk about how she's like a former Yankee, which is like a female thug in Japan. But so they're fighting at microweight at the next card. And I think Mizuki, I mean, in the Kana Asakura fight, she just got she got big sistered by Kana Asakura. Kana was so much stronger than her. She just kind of threw her to the ground. So I think microweight is home for her. And I mean, it's not a bad thing. Aya Murakami is a stud down there. It looks like it's a fun division. It's growing. So if I was her, I would just stay there. And talk about the popularity. She was on a reality show on Abima TV. And the reality show was absolutely stacked. I think it was her, Itsuki Hirata, and it was Mio, Rena's former teammate, who's a kickboxer. We're all doing amateur MMA fights, and the winner got a 1 championship contract, and that's how Itsuki got into 1. But Mizuki made it to the finals, and I think she had made a lot of fans based off of that show.
I want to actually ask about the microweight division, or what is it that Mark Q calls it? He calls it something different. He doesn't call it microweight. He calls it something like
pen weight or something.
Yeah. But I'm just curious to know like what happened with it. Cause I know pre-pandemic they had that tournament. Amp, the Rocket was in it from I think she made it to the finals. And
it's good that you mentioned that. So Saki actually talked about Amp the Rocket in his last post-fight press conference at the Deep Jewels 36. He said that she went back to Thailand, and I think she's actually gotten a job in Thailand. So it's been kind of hard to get her back into the country to defend the title. And so I believe that Amp the Rocket is the Deep Jewels microweight champion, and Saudi Oshima is the deep microweight champion. So they have kind of 2 champions. So they need, whenever Amp is back, I think they need to do like a title unifier. He actually talked about that.
Are we going to have a Mizuki Inoue situation?
Oh, what? Where she's the champion until this month? No, I don't think that's going to happen. But Yeah, I think there's hope in the division because microweight in Deep Jewels has always kind of depended on having a big star. It was historically like the Satoko Shinashi division. And when she came back, that's kind of how the division got restarted because it was her versus Nisei. But now that Aya Murakami is on her way to becoming a big star herself, I think the division's self-sufficient and it doesn't need Satoko Shinashi to drive it anymore. And if Mizuki Furuse is down there, and then they also have this girl Chibasai, who they're marketing as the smallest fighter in deep history, who's actually from a prefecture I used to live in. I think they're putting some marketing juice behind it. So I think the division is going to be around for a while.
Speaking of her, I wonder like her name, is that some kind of joke on like
It is.
It is.
That is not her actual name.
Okay.
That is just a nickname of hers.
I see.
Yeah, to also further bother people that don't speak Japanese, there's the Japanese fighters that make up Japanese names that aren't their real names. You have to like, oh, that's not their actual name.
So like me, like the Last Samurai, Mark Hunt, that guy.
Oh yeah, no, I mean they deceive you. Like Chibasai sounds like it could be a Japanese name, but that's not her name at all. It's just a reference to her being incredibly short.
Oh, okay.
It might also be it's like I think it's like a Dragon Ball Z joke mixed with her being really short or something. Can't quite remember, but yeah.
Okay.
You've got like this rising fighter at like heavyweight. He's like Shibisai, right?
Well, I was thinking,
Like,
is it a joke about?
Has it any relationship to that? Like, but then Shibisai with the like Chibi because she's small. Like, is that kind of like a joke, or does it come from something else? I wondered.
Both of them are an anime reference to a certain character, I think.
I see.
Okay, moving on to the fight that Andrew loves and wanted to talk about. We have Manhoof coming back and facing off. These are both veterans that came back kind of after some hiatus. Kiryu versus Manhoof. Anouk, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, before watching the actual fight, actually just the name Manhoof stood out very much to me. Like, but just for my information, is she actually related to like the Manhoof, or is that
No.
or is that again just like people? So that was the first thing that stood out to me. Like, okay, that's an interesting name. Like, I'd never heard of her or seen any of her fights. So, and then watching the fight, I was really impressed. Like, of course, I saw the last fight of Kiryu Yuko, and she was very strong. Like, her pounding looked really dangerous. So I was really excited to see what she'd do this fight. And then, of course, I didn't have any background on Manhoof. And then seeing the fight, I was like, both fighters are so skilled. Like, you could like really feel the veteran fight vibes here, like, and then, yeah, it was really nice to watch because it was just like high level MMA, like two high level fighters, not just two people just like putting in their ki, and just like giving it all. That could be interesting to watch, but this was interesting to watch on a different level just because they were both really skilled and they could do stuff both striking wise and also on the ground, wrestling. So for me personally, also some like a fight that I could really learn a lot from. So really interesting to watch.
Yeah. Andrew?
Unfortunately, I was like disappointed with this fight. I just kind of like it. I'll be honest, I can't remember a thing. I rewatched these fights, all these fights twice, and then the Sugiyama Shimizu fight twice, about 3 or 4 times. But this fight I watched twice. I still can't remember anything that happened from it. It was just like up against the cage, and let's see who holds down who the longest. I was kind of like a little bit disappointed that there was. I was kind of disappointed by the lack of. I guess I kind of expected, I always bring up, my favorite return ever from a hiatus from a fighter was Dominic Cruz, destroying what was it, Mizugaki? I think it was Mizugaki, right?
I still cite that as the most perfect performance I've ever seen in a fight.
And I wasn't expecting Manhoof to like do that, but like I was hoping, the almost decade-year layoff, it would seem like a rejuvenation. There must be a reason why she's returning to MMA. So yeah, like I couldn't like even tell you like, oh, I thought Manhoof should have won it, or Kiryu was the clear winner. So I kind of tuned out this fight because really I also have a real problem with the 2 rounds. I hate the 2 rounds. It's so ridiculous. Like 3 rounds is like good enough. Like, the 2 round thing just like irritates me from like a MMA fan perspective.
Well,
Too short.
I do think that this fight did have the misfortune of being on a card where every other fight was with like a very current, very popular up and coming star. So it seemed kind of out of place. But yeah, Anouk, what do you think about the rounds? How do you feel about the 2 versus the 3 rounds?
Mm, it kind of depends. Like sometimes there's fights where you're like, well, I would have loved to have another round because this is kind of hard to decide in 2 rounds. Overall, I think 2 rounds is okay because I guess in a way, this makes you, this makes you be able to have more fights on a card without it being like extremely long. So I guess in that sense, 2 rounds could be good. But yeah, definitely if there's like a really popular fight or, like 3 rounds would be better because, it's, you want to see more of them. And then 2 rounds sometimes is just too short to
I have a problem with that from the 2 rounds because if a fighter query wins round 1, then they can coast on round 2 and still get a win, as opposed to like, okay, a third round could be a game changer. And that's my personal, like, I especially when we talk about the Sugiyama fight, I'd be very curious if that went to a third round. But we can talk about that when we get there. Yeah, I'm old. And plus, there's a reason why like so many Japanese MMA fighters have like draws on their records, like the beginning of their career, because like because there was if you look it up, 2-round fights. What do you, and so like, they won one round and the other round, and then as you know, CJ, we talked about that judges are very indecisive in Japanese MMA, more so even in kickboxing. So yeah, I'm not a fan of the 2-round thing.
I will say I used to be more like Andrew like 10 years ago, and I used to hate the 2 rounds. And then I spoke to Hitomi Akano about it because I was kind of like, do you like the 2 rounds or 3 rounds? And in my mind, she was going to say, well, the 3 rounds, of course. But she said she actually preferred the 2 rounds because she thought it allowed for more exciting fights. The fighters didn't have to worry about pacing themselves for a 3-round fight. And so they could actually go for finishes in the first round and not worry about draining themselves and producing a more exciting fight for the fans. And so that kind of changed my opinion on it a little bit. Also, I always try to remember that with deep jewels, a lot of the fighters, I mean, they are kind of like not really professional fighters. They all work probably full-time jobs, and they're not out running 10 miles a day to build their stamina up. So maybe it's not, the 2 rounds is kind of nice because it allows people to fight and be exciting during the time they're fighting instead of having everyone be exhausted in a 3rd round in a fight. So I can kind of see that. And kind of like I'm kind of side with Anouk as well, where some of the fights that get made, you don't really want to see 3 rounds. Like there's some fights with like some people that are making their debuts, and it would just turn into like a Denver UFC heavyweight fight with just 2 exhausted people flopping around in the 3rd round. So I'm okay with the 2-round fights, but I think that a nice thing that might be worth looking into is deep jewels. They already do the thing where they have a ton of different rule sets. Each match has a different rule set, it seems like. And the tournament bouts, especially, I feel like those should have been made 3 rounds. Kind of like kind of like championship fights.
I agree. Oh, listen, I absolutely agree. Like, if you want to make the prelims or the non-tournament fights, yeah, I agree. As well as the amateur, I'm not opposed to 2 rounds, but like, I think, a Ring Nakai main event should have been 3 rounds. And yeah, that's another thing of that. The one thing I'm not that deep, like every fight seems to have like different rules. Like some fights will have, soccer kicks allowed, but I won't know that until like they deliver a soccer kick and the ref doesn't disqualify them. Or like, yeah, that's the problem. Is that like I never know the rules, and also because it seems like different rules for different fights for whatever reason.
See, I love it. I'm all about the different rules for different fights because I like the whole here's the ceremony where they're signing the bout agreement, and it makes it seem like, oh, they negotiated and agreed on the rules. Just makes it seem so much more old school. Like, oh, we actually sat down and discussed what rules are going to be allowed in this fight. I love it. And final note on the Manhoof fight. I remember her because I'm older than all of you apparently. I remember when she fought in her original run, when she was the Jules champion. She actually hit Celine Haga so hard it fractured her orbital bone, and Celine Haga was stuck in Japan because you can't fly with a broken orbital bone for a long time. And it became this whole thing that like Celine Haga was stuck in a hospital in Japan because Manhoof just starched her with a huge punch. So going into this fight, I was kind of hoping to see some of that power come back, but it looked like Kiryu had the right strategy, and Manhoof fought as hard as she could to not get taken down and ground out, but she just wasn't able to keep Kiryu off of her. And so, well done, Kiryu.
I have a question for you, CJ. Did Manhoof say that she's making a full-time return, or is this like a one-off?
Well, see, that's the beauty of Deep and Deep Jewels is there is room for fighters that just kind of want to do it casually. And I would expect to see her back because she looked in great physical shape for her age. And she worked, and I think her husband own an MMA gym, or at least she works at one, because her Facebook page is always her at the gym. And so I would expect to see her come back, especially, I feel like if you come back and you lose, you kind of have that hunger where you want to go out on a win. So I'd expect to see her come back.
Oh, yes. Not an obvious loss as well. So
I'm sorry?
Sorry, it was not an obvious loss as well.
No,
so,
no.
I mean, that would definitely motivate her to try just a little bit harder and get that win next time, I guess.
I wouldn't describe it as a giant loss. You're right. I would describe it more as like a frustrating loss where she seemed frustrated the whole fight. Right? Yeah.
She was like, yeah, and then like she got really disappointed when the judges decided on the other person.
You know what it reminded me of? I don't know if you ever see the Neiman Gracie Jason Jackson fight, CJ.
I did not know.
It's one of the most horrible, boring fights of all time. And like, it was a fight where like neither fighter did anything to like make me think, oh, you're the clear winner. Had they have ruled this like a no contest or a draw, I would have not been opposed to that. I felt.
Was that a one championship fight?
No, that was a Bellator fight.
Okay.
With Jason Jackson.
I have a hard time keeping track of all of the Gracies and what promotions they're fighting.
Oh no, because like, yeah. And I said many times that, you know, like that fight may be one of the most boring fights of all time. And we're like, to me, this fight had no definitive winner and no definitive loser in my book.
Was it more or less boring than Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou 1?
That's an exception because that was a 5-round main event fight. What was in 5 round 5 times 5? That's 25 minutes. Felt like a fucking hour. By the way, also, if you want to know, she owns she's a coach of the Cobra Kai MMA dojo.
Yeah, I was laughing when I saw that because I was just like, this new TV show is doing a lot of great marketing for their gym for them. Like Cobra Kai back in, they named their gym well. Okay, so let's move on. So I actually wanted to hear Andrew's opinion on this fight because he is a grappler. And before we go into it, I will say with some clarification. So Moetti Suda in her post-fight speech thanked her father for training with her. Raises an eyebrow, right? You're like, okay, that's interesting. Who is her father? Her father is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and is a former MMA fighter. He doesn't have, I think he's like 1-5 or something. He doesn't have like a good MMA record, but he's clearly a very high level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu player. And he actually, I believe, owns the gym she trains at. And so all of a sudden, her arm bars start to make a little bit more sense when you're coming home to a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt every day and working on your arm bars. Andrew, I mean, this is perfect. This is the fight I want to hear your opinion the most, just because of all of these submission attempts.
Well, you know, it's surprising that is this the first time that Oona has been submitted? I don't know. You're more of a fan of her and the because she's I'm
going to say no. I think she's been knocked out and submitted before.
Okay, I don't count that. I was actually really surprised, you know, that someone could submit. Oh no, Actually, I'm also rewatching the fight now, so I have it on here. And Iono made the big mistake of trying to. So she's got the leg. Let's see. Suda has the legs over. She's trying to go for the armbar, and it looks like that. Iono tried to defend it, but she made the big mistake of. Hold on, my YouTube video's lagging. Actually, no. So Suda tried for a triangle. It looks like. And she went back to the armbar. That's very interesting. Yeah. Yeah. So she tried to flip over, but then she did. So, remember when Hamazaki did the Kana, the first fight? It's exactly almost similar to how she submitted her. And I gotta say, listen, submitting Aono is like, that's deep. No pun intended. And that was a deep armbar as well. Yeah, I was really surprised that you could submit someone who has the grappling prowess of Ono, and yeah, good on Suda. I'm not too familiar with her. I'm kind of like a casual deep person, so this win must have. If you're doing DraftKings betting, I'm guessing probably she'd be the underdog.
So I will give you some background. So she started out her career 0-2. And has now won 5 in a row, with most of those wins coming by submission, I believe. She's super young. She's either 17 or 18 years old. She's from Osaka, and besides training with her father, it looks like she regularly trains with Aoi Kuriyama and Hanako Sawa. But I was just, armbar attempt after armbar attempt after armbar attempt. And I would say that in her last fight, when she submitted Eru Takabayashi, who you'll be familiar with, who fought Sakura and Rising, that's what really caused my eyebrow to raise a little bit, because she chained submissions together very similar to this fight until she got it, which I love watching a fighter go from submission to submission to submission. And it kind of, the example I always use is it's not a submission, but it reminds me of when Travis Brown was fighting Alistair Overeem, and it's like, oh, he threw a front kick. Oh, he threw another front kick. I think his game plan might be the front kick. Oh, he threw another front kick. Oh, he threw another front kick. Oh, he knocked him out with the front kick. Like, how many times can you let the guy underneath you almost hit an armbar before it's over?
Also, when I'm actually have a record up here, 3 armbar wins as a pro. And the thing is that by then it's kind of like, listen, you kind of have a blueprint for how this person fights. It's kind of like Imanari. If you don't plan to do like heel hook defense or foot lock defense, then you're an idiot. You're not well prepared. So I don't know if Aono just didn't think that she could be armbar, and just kind of just like, I'm Hikaru Ono. I have a great grappling background myself. I don't have to worry about it. But no, she listen. Yeah, I love grappling transitions as well. Like this.
Well, I say like, let's move on to Anouk. Actually, before I go into mine, what do you think of the fight? I was super impressed.
Both of these people are grapplers rather than strikers, so it was interesting to see how they would match up. To be honest, I kind of expected Suda to win because she's on such a, she's a flame, so to say. She's been winning.
She's on a hot streak. Yeah, she's really shooting for it.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like, usually those kind of people who are like on a winning streak, they are just unstoppable. So, and I don't know, I kind of feel like maybe recently she's been in sort of a slump, because like actually talking, like kind of the topic goes back a little bit, but I think she was submitted by in the tournament last year by Saori Oshima. She was submitted by like a.
She was not submitted by. You're thinking of Emi Tomimatsu. Hikaru Aono was submitted by Tomo Maesawa and Emi Tomimatsu.
Am I mixing them up? Why? Okay.
Hikaru, you're very close. Hikaru Aono made it to the finals, but was beat by decision.
Oh, by decision. Okay. Yeah. So I'm mixing up. Sorry.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's easily confused. But she has been submitted 3 times in the past. So she is open to the submission.
Yeah, I just when watching her recent fights, I kind of felt like because she said in an interview as well, like I'm just having fight after fight after fight, and I don't have time to practice my own things because I'm always preparing for fights. So I would like to take some time off. Then she had a grappling match as well, which she won thanks to Izawa Seika winning on their team. So I kind of felt like maybe she's trying to get out of that slump. So this would be a good chance, but like Suda is just unstoppable. So watching the fight, I just felt like, okay, they both had a good chance. Like she did her defense well, but just like Suda was just, too strong this fight, I felt.
I apologize.
It's like the finality of the submission. It's just, doesn't matter how many times you escape it. If you keep giving your opponent the chance to go for it, if they finally get it, it's over.
Yeah.
I actually, CJ,
comfortable.
You know what it remind me? I just thought of it. Remember Ota versus Tokoro?
Yes.
Yeah, I figured that, Ota, if he was smart, he would have realized, oh, Tokoro's just going to go for arm bars because that's what he does. I think I should have counted how many arm bars Tokoro went for that fight, but like it had to be at least over 5 or at least 5 on the dot. And so I kind of figured that you eventually would learn, you realize, oh, she's going for an arm bar the entire time. Try not to get arm barred.
Going back to what Anouk was saying, I do think Hikaru Ano is kind of in a slump. And she trains with Seika Izawa and she trains with Kana Watanabe. So she has high quality sparring partners, and she looked good in the tournament. She was very motivated. It's very clear that she wants to be in Rising with her boyfriend, Shuta Watanabe. And I'm all for it. I need that to happen. I need them to be. Shuta Watanabe at the press conference for Rising even mentioned her in his comment. He was like, my girlfriend just fought in Deep Jewels. Like, they're a very adorable couple.
It's so cute.
I need them in Rising. But she's in a slump because, in the tournament, I believe she submitted Nisei almost immediately. She absolutely destroyed Nisei. But it shows she does have some submission skills, but I think overall she still is just a wrestler. And I think she's had a hard time growing those skills. And she's fairly short, so her striking is probably never going to be world class, but I think she needs to work on her striking. And she also needs to do something to her training to evolve a little bit more, because at this point, she's just kind of stuck as a wrestler, it looks like, in my opinion.
Do you think she's the type of fighter who just some people she just stylistically matches up better against, depending on their style?
Well, this was a terrible matchup for her, because this matchup was terrible if you knew who Suda is, because it's like, oh, Suda throws submission from her back nonstop, and Aono isn't really a big finisher, so that's going to be a lot of time for Suda to throw something up. And plus, Anouk's right. When a fighter's in the middle of a hot streak, I feel like it's going to take a lot to derail them.
Gotcha.
I almost forgot to mention. So in the post-fight speech, I already mentioned that Suda said that she thanked her father. She also asked for a title shot with Saudi Yoshima for the atomweight title, and that has been granted. She will be fighting Saudi Yoshima on May 8th for the atomweight title, and that's going to be a crazy fight because, talk about it, Saudi Yoshima. What does Saudi Yoshima do? Saudi Yoshima is a spider monkey who, if it goes on the ground, she will have an armbar attempt in under 10 seconds. She will scuttle across your body and find your arm. What does Suda do? Suda is an armbar nut who, once it hits the ground, is going to go to an armbar. So what I'm saying is May 8th is going to be a crazy kickboxing bout between two. No, I'm just kidding. But no, this is going to be an armbar city. I'm super excited to see these two grapplers go at it. What do you think, Anouk? I see you nodding along.
I think this is going to be really interesting because, in a way, Oshima is also on like a hot winning streak. Which, well, the last fight she had a lot of trouble. We'll probably get into that later. But so I think both of these fighters are like really eager to win. Of course, I think Oshima doesn't plan to give up her title. My prediction is I think Suda has a very good chance of getting that finish. Just because of what she's been showing, like you say, like she just like the dynamic, like she doesn't just like stick on like getting this one submission. I mean, she goes for it, but then if it doesn't work, she goes to something else. But I think Oshima also has that skill to like go from position to position to change submissions, and so yeah, it's gonna be. I kind of have an image of what to expect, but I'm really excited to see how this actually turns out, because it could also be that both are like, well, I ain't gonna be grappling this person. I'm just gonna keep it standing. So that would be interesting as well. So yeah.
What do you think about that potential matchup, Andrew?
That's the thing, is that I think you said it best, is that, it's going to turn into a kickbox fight. Listen, that's not entirely not an unrealistic thought. The problem is that when you have two people that are so good at what they are, it kind of almost, their skills negate each other sometimes. And then it turns into a fight. It could be an exciting fight if it turns into a kickboxing match. That'd be interesting. But ideally, you want to see the two grapplers who fight off their back kind of do it. Because my fear is
don't
that
want a replay of a Daisuke Nakamura where the grappling was fun in his last fight, but that striking needed get it back to the ground. Get it back to the ground.
I have a fear that like as soon as like Oshima gets down to the ground, Sueda might stand up and then like just kick her legs, and then referee stands him up. Same thing with vice versa. That's the one thing that I'm worried about, is that neither are they're going to be fearful of the others. If I had to put who's probably better, though, probably Saori Oshima. The other question I have is would kicks to the head of would the up kicks be legal in that match, or probably not?
I don't think they would be under Deep Jewels unless they're like.
that makes it slightly more uninteresting, because if there's up kicks allowed, then listen, Oshima, she started a revolution with that. She legitimately did. That's like the Connor Don Cerrone shoulder crank. You started seeing all the fighters doing that move after that. So, we started seeing all the up kicks from fighters after that. So, yeah, I definitely think, if they could somehow make it not necessarily soccer kicks allowed, but up kick is allowed, I think it's a much more interesting fight.
Andrew, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on jiu-jitsu versus judo?
Oh, sorry, me?
No, Andrew, what are your thoughts on the old, if you have a jiu-jitsu background, how does jiu-jitsu people normally fare against judo players?
The thing, so like today I was going up against somebody who actually had a judo background, or said they had a judo background. See, the problem with judo people is that they are so focused at getting you down to the ground, they almost forget sometimes that there's submissions you can get just from standing, like a standing guillotine or like a jumping armbar or jumping whatever triangle. Hard submissions nonetheless, but still submissions. And problem with judo people is that they all, especially in no-gi, they're like they have like two left hands. They were really struggling. They really struggle. If it's gi jiu-jitsu, it's a lot easier because judo is only in the gi. So they have a much easier time adapting. But yeah, that's a problem with a lot of judo people, is that they kind of, and I think you saw this a lot with Sexyama in his career, with that judo background, was that, yeah, he would always try to get people down to the ground. But then if it was going up against a wrestler would be like, I'm trying to remember the fight that he had in UFC. It was a really cool fight. Was it Belcher? I think it was Belcher, right?
Yeah, he had a great fight with Belcher.
Yeah, Belcher out grapple him by light years.
Well, Belcher's also nuts. Didn't Belcher also engage in a footlock battle with Paul Harris?
Yes. Yeah, but Belcher, he trained with Dean Lister with that fight too.
Belcher's nuts. He's a crazy person.
But yeah, and also who recently retired, Omigawa. Omigawa's, his weakness was MMA grappling. That's the problem, is that he would always get out grappled and submitted by people who were or just like out grappled by people that were like way below his level. And I also think that he did try to like not do his judo, but I think it was so ingrained in his mind that he couldn't help himself. That's how I see it, is that judo people really have a problem adapting it to jiu-jitsu, especially in no-gi.
Anouk, what have you done any training with some judo players?
No, I haven't. No, actually, at my gym, there's not many people there's some judo background, but
how's that possible? I thought they teach judo in it's a high school requirement.
Well, you can take judo, karate, or kendo, I believe.
Oh, okay. I thought judo. I thought judo was like the sole thing that was required.
I mean, probably there must be people at my gym who have a judo background, but like among my sparring partners, there's no one who's like obviously going for judo takedowns or throws. I mean, there's one guy who I know who did judo in high school and university, but he's like welterweight, so I don't usually spar him. So.
Right.
Point this example.
My example is, I don't want to do too many spoilers of the One Championship show because I know Andrew hasn't watched it yet. I'm not going to give away any result. It's just a frustrating thing I noticed in the Itsuki Hirata fight, who comes from a judo background, is that judo players sometimes when they go for, they're so desperate to get it to the ground that they have this weird thing where they almost give their back to their opponent. Because in judo, if they get the person to the mat with the ippon, it's over. They don't care about the person climbing on their back and going for a rear naked choke. But I don't think Saudi Oshima's never really shown a big tendency to go for the arm throws, like the head and arm throw that seems to curse a lot of those fighters. So I don't think that'll be a problem with her. And what's exciting for this fight to me is that when I interviewed her, she actually went to a judo high school that specialized in ground fighting. It wasn't a specialty in the takedowns. It was a specialty in the actual submissions once you get to the ground. So, I mean, I know it's not the same as jiu-jitsu, but I feel like 23 years of judo experience is going to be, that's more judo than Suda is alive. She did judo longer than Suda has currently been alive. So I feel like that's going to be a giant experience edge. But as Anouk said, Suka's super flexible. She's on a hot streak, and I hope it goes grappling. I hope it. Yeah,
I hope so too.
All right, let's move on to the next one. I'm actually very excited about this fight. I mean, the result was kind of predictable, but I think Miki Matono has star potential written all over her, and I'd love to see her in Rising. What did you guys think about this fight? Let's start with Anouk this time.
Ooh. I find it very hard to comment on this one. I mean, both are good fighters, and I always love watching Nise fight because of her personality, I guess. She always she fights with such enjoyment. Even if she loses, she always seems happy to have fought and she had fun. Motono Miki was just like you said, like high level. I mean, like just the control, like she knows what she's doing. She just feels like she's executing her game plan, like the way she intends to, and just strategically works towards whatever she wants to do. And I know from people around me who talk about Motono Miki, I mean, she used to be the deep champion, and she got that title taken away from her recently, but that doesn't take away the fact that she's like a very, very skilled fighter. And she, like, even though she lost a championship, like it doesn't seem like that affected her like going into a slump or getting pressed or whatever. So she's still fighting for it. So I think she still has that potential, and she's still improving every time. So yeah, interesting. Kind of.
I agree with you 100% because her record's kind of deceiving because she has 3 losses on it. 2 of those are to Seika Izawa, who's probably the best. I mean, she is a prospect / champ, is like the best fighter to emerge on the Japanese scene recently. And the other loss is to a girl in Australia who is now in the UFC. So, I mean, she was beaten by very good people. And she was described to me at first as like a little Ayaka Hamasaki, and I see it 100%. The only benefit is she's much younger than Ayaka was when she got started. What do you think of the fight, Andrew?
Well, listen, I kind of only know Motono, like not as much as perhaps you two. But I guess you said it best that her record is deceiving. Mm-hmm. I think that's a case for a lot of the atom weight fighters, minus the few like Hamazaki, Kana, those types. It was it was like, it was just like, it was 2 rounds, right? No, it was one round.
Well,
yeah,
it was 1 round. She smashed. It was a 2-round fight, but it did not go the 2 rounds.
Oh yeah. It was a completely like totally smashing, Nisei. Nisei is an interesting fighter. I don't watch a lot of the pre-match stuff because I don't know what's being said 90% of the time, but I have seen some stuff with Nisei, and she also seems to have like a personality as well that Deep Jewels maybe could siphon off. And she also is a good fighter. I think before the Rizin 32 fight, she had finished over fights, if I remember correctly.
No, she got beat she was in the atomweight tournament twice, and she got beat both times fairly handedly.
No, sorry, I'm sorry, I might say that wrong. I mean, she all of her wins were finishes.
That's true. Yeah, she's very much a brawler. Yeah, so she goes for the TKO finish. I mean, she jumped onto the scene by getting a TKO over Satoko Shinashi, and that kind of put her in all the headlines. I kind of, not skill-wise, but she kind of reminds me of Conor McGregor a little bit in that, remember that picture of Conor McGregor with him when he was a fan with Chuck Liddell?
Yes.
Well,
yes.
You do the same thing with Nisei. Nisei is a diehard MMA fan. And there's pictures of her at like MMA events, taking pictures of Sakakibara and other people. And I think she's done pretty well for having no martial arts background. But that's just, as we said in the preview to this fight, and that's just the difference. Miki Matono, like Oshima, has been doing judo for 23 years. That's a big gap to close when you don't have a background at all in mixed martial arts.
I think also Matono trains out of AACC. That's correct, if I'm correct. Okay.
Yep.
Oh, listen, you're with the best. Well, I guess women's only gym or whatever in Japan. Listen,
they're not women's only. They're not women's only. I think Otsuka trained there for a long time.
Oh, okay. I thought they were women's. I thought they were women's only. My bad. Okay.
Like all the good fighters are at AACC, basically. There's so many women fighters.
Okay.
If you come from a judo background, you feel a natural urge to go to AACC at about the age of 22. Just like pulls at you this instinct to go train at AACC.
I guess I have another question as well. Hamazaki, she was on commentary, right?
No, it was Seika Izawa on commentary.
Why? Oh, they kept on saying Hamazaki. So I thought it was Hamazaki.
Maybe they were talking about Hamasaki.
Okay. What do you think? How do you think Matono, how do you think she compares to like the top of like Deep Jewels or Rizin or just Japanese atomweights?
My opinion, she goes to Rising now. She beats Kana Asakura, in my opinion. The problem is Rising's, outside of Kana Asakura, Rising's super atomweight division is quite old. And a lot of the fighters are going to struggle with the physicality of Miki Matono, who's going to be able to bring the heat for the whole 3 rounds. Because, I mean, Miyu Yamamoto is an athletic stud, but she's also in her late 40s now. And I think she's shown some stamina problems. She gets tired in some of her fights. And Miki Matono's not going to get tired. And unlike Saudi Oshima, I love Saudi Oshima. Saudi Oshima's a stud. Saudi Oshima's a microweight who goes up to atomweight to fight. She doesn't cut weight to fight at atomweight. Miki Matono is bigger. Miki Matono used to be a strawweight going down to atomweight. So she's going to be much bigger than Oshima with the same background. I mean, they went to school together. Matono's the reason that Oshima is in MMA. So, I mean, they have that shared background, but I think Matono goes into Rising, and if Seika Izawa wasn't there, she could become champion.
I see. Okay.
What do you think? Do you agree, Anouk, or do you think different?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that happening.
Yeah. Because, I mean, Rising doesn't really have an atomweight division, do they? Super atomweight, because their whole bringing in foreign fighters strategy.
They had an atomweight.
All they really have is what they have: Ayaka Hamasaki, they have Miyu, they had Emi Fujino, but I think that was just a one-off because she's back in Pancrase now. So I think the division's really only 3 or 4 fighters, and I think Miki Matono beats most of them. Yeah, but so. As we said, Sakakibara, as I've said before, Sakakibara did talk about doing a super atomweight tournament this year.
I think that's the thing. Yeah.
Was he there?
Matono he was there. He was there.
Okay.
And I think he was there. Kudomoto was there, and Sudario's brother was there. It's quite interesting Rising attendance going on, but So I'm going to say that Motono should probably be part of that super atomweight tournament that Rising is talking about. And for all the people, she seems to be fairly close to the Rena. If you watch the Rena fights, she usually seconds Rena recently in her Rising fights. So should be interesting. But the next we have, speaking of Oshima, Saudi Oshima versus Hime. A little background, I already mentioned it. Hime was a semi-professional basketball player. It's kind of like judo and karate in Japan, where private companies will have their own teams that they sponsor. She played on a basketball team for a long time. They don't post her age, but if I had to guess, I found the years she went to college. I'd say she's around 34, 35 years old.
I think it was on the YouTube video when like the fight showed up, like
30, they do show it?
34. I think it showed the ages. I think she was 34-ish.
Cool. Around there, yeah. But when this fight was announced, my red flags were raised to me. I'm like, this is gonna be a problem for Oshima, because Hime lost to Miki Motono, but she didn't look bad. She moved well. She was able to get out of submission attempts, and it looks like she's developing a kind of counter striker style. And that kind of showed in this fight. What do you think about the fight, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of going to, Oshima kind of had all that hype from her defeating Kana match. So I kind of figured, oh, we're gonna see Oshima dominate again. But I don't want to say that may have been a unicorn type of win, but you might be right that she might be just too small for this division, atomweight. So I think it kind of sucks that if she'd have to go down to microweight. I still think that's one of the most impressive, I guess, underdog wins in women's MMA history, certainly like Rizin's women's MMA. But like, I mean, here's the thing: it wasn't a bad loss. She just kind of just got like, and she still had moments in that fight. She was not in trouble. She wasn't near getting finished. So this wasn't like, a loss of like, she just got dominated for, I was about to say 2 rounds.
I'll tell you what, my opinion afterwards, after thinking about it, is if you remove the first minute of that fight, it's a very different fight.
And that's why I'm going back to like the 3 rounds. It would have, had this fight had been 3 rounds, could Oshima maybe had, formulate, okay, I know this is what Nisei is going to do. Nisei's done this. Nisei's done that. Maybe in this 3rd round, I can turn around with something. That's why I'm a fan of the 3 rounds, because it gives, sometimes I know I hate fighters who turn it on, so to speak, in the 3rd round. I think that's the lamest excuse for why somebody loses a fight. But it just would have been more interesting had this gone, I think, an extra round. I would have been curious to see if Oshima could have adapted to what Nisei's doing in terms of how she's winning this and how she won the fight.
Anouk, what do you think about the fight?
I think a lot about the fight. First of all, yeah, like you said, like Hime just moved really well. And to be honest, I did not expect her to win, even though I'm kind of a Hime fan. But Oshima's just very skilled, and I kind of expected her to like just submit Hime, which did not happen. So I was very impressed with that. But then the interesting thing about this fight is I think the background, because from what I heard is that in the weeks leading up to the fight, Oshima might have gotten corona.
She did. She had it 3 weeks before the fight.
Yeah, which is I've actually been in a very similar situation myself, not with corona, but with getting injured 3 weeks before a fight. And she was not able to train properly. So I think mentally she was not all there 100%. Like she couldn't, because if you can't train, like you can't really mentally prepare very well for a fight maybe. And I think that's what you said as well. Like she kind of tried to rush in for takedowns too much. And I think that kind of got her. Like she had her pressure on the whole fight. Like she was pressuring Hime, but Hime was just very skilled at like moving around and like just like while moving back, still getting those punches in, which is I think why she just won the fight, which I was really impressed with, because yeah, I just didn't expect that to happen. But like, I mean, Oshima tried, but I guess like she didn't seem like her usual self. So it would be interesting to see how she would do in like, I would maybe I would want to see like a matchup right away, but I would be interesting to see how she would do like without like the circumstances that she had this fight, because I think she would have, had more submission attempts and or get takedowns.
I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot about that. Yes, she did say she had corona. And I also got the impression, I think she had a lot of pressure on her going into this fight because of the rising win.
Yeah.
Really skyrocketed her popularity. I mean, that fight might be it's the most watched women's fight in Rising history.
Oh, really?
Like it has millions of views. It has skyrocketed on Rising's YouTube channel. And you have to take this into account. She's married. Her husband's a professional judo player. And despite her popularity, he is the breadwinner. And so he goes and trains all day. And so she has to take care of young twins. And so she has openly admitted she doesn't get to train as much as other fighters. And then everything's like a delicate balance. She has to take care of her kids while also finding time to train. And when you throw a wrench into that by getting corona, that just completely derails her, because the first minute of the fight seemed very desperate by her. She was like, I have to get this down and I have to get the arm bar now. And after that minute, because of the way Deep Jewels scores fights, it kind of turned into a Thai kickboxing match. Because as I understand Thai scoring, once a Thai kickboxer rocks someone, they just move away because you have to go get it back. And so the fight just became Saudi Oshima trying to undo the damage that got done in the first minute. But in 2 rounds, she almost had it. She almost had an armbar. Every time she got it onto the ground, she was very good. And I would like to see a fight where she took the more measured approach, because when she was measured, she did much better against Hime. Hime was just more than willing to I'll just back up and clock you right in the face if you're going to run right at me. And I think that first minute really affected her. And I also based her comments after the fight. I mean, she went on a Twitter storm afterwards, and then she turned her account to private. I think she was getting harassed by a lot of people. And so I think she had a lot of pressure going into this fight. So that's why I'm interested to see her in the Suda fight, because I almost predict this lights a fire under her. And I bet we see her come back even better than before.
Sorry, Oshima had COVID?
She did 3 weeks before the fight.
Oh, they let her actually compete. I'm actually legitimately surprised that like they've let her the fight continue, even if the 2 week thing. Because there were some fighters who like still didn't even compete. Like trying to remember the fighter. Lyman Good had COVID, but then was like hospitalized for like about a month. I'm sure that Oshima got better, but like I'm surprised that like she would take the fight even after like the 2 week.
That's kind of the pressure thing, as I was saying, like there's so much pressure on these fighters. Most of it's self-made. Shu and I have talked about it before. These fighters put so much pressure on themselves that's unnecessary. Going into this fight, Anouk can talk about this. Deep Jewels fighters try really hard to sell their own tickets. And so Oshima's got a big fan base. When you go to an Oshima fight, she has a lot of supporters. That's got to be a factor. If you're injured 3 weeks out, you think, I sold 100 tickets. I can't do this. I have 100 people coming to watch me fight. I have all these people supporting me. I have these sponsors. I have to go gut it out kind of mentality, I feel like.
It doesn't surprise me that the fight didn't get canceled. I mean, of course, getting corona just before a fight is not a good thing, but like if you recover,
yeah, I
mean, cases vary per person. So if she had maybe more of like a mild case, then you could be better after a few days, and then I can't imagine anyone being like, okay, I had COVID 3 weeks ago, but I'm feeling good right now. Why should I cancel my fight because I had COVID a few weeks ago? I mean, it does really affect that you can't train because you have to like hide, not infect other people.
Is this going to be like a thing where like, some fighters got corona and they start like losing, or is it going to be like pre-COVID Oshima or like pre-COVID Jacare or something?
I will say though, Saudi Oshima does say that her loss to Siwoo Park really motivated her, and she's super competitive. I bet she comes back even better. That's mine. But yeah, I don't think we're going to see the COVID excuse. I mean, she barely brought it up herself. She just mentioned it in the opening speech before the fight, she mentioned it because she was the one that kind of welcomed the crowd. And she talked about how everyone's having a hard time going through Corona and that she went through it. So I don't think she was using it as an excuse at all.
No, everyone knows though, but
Yeah. All right. Now the tournament was kind of absolutely slaughtered. I kind of wished they would have moved the fights to the Osaka card that's coming up and still had the tournament take place, because Siwoo Park got COVID and they just pushed her fight back to the April 8th Osaka card. And both of these cards involve both the canceled fights are Osaka fighters. So I would have liked to have seen it just happen on the Osaka card, but that is not the case. So it's the first fight in the tournament, Sugiyama versus Nirvana. And I would just like to plug Nirvana. I think she's one of the funniest fighters in Deep Jewels right now. And her social media is well worth the follow. I think the funny post from this weekend was she saw some guy staring at her on the street and she thought the guy was going to hit on her. And so she got all excited. And then the guy came over and tried to sell her an apartment. And so she, interesting follow. I think she also once live streamed her drunk walking home because she missed the trains. So one of the more interesting follows on Deep Jewels. Andrew, what do you think of the fight?
Okay, I think the big thing we gotta talk about is the armbar. Is that going to be like the talking point of this fight? That armbar?
Yeah, let's do it. Go right into it. You're the jiu-jitsu guy.
You know the Luke Thomas meme. I watched this fight 45 times or whatever he said for like Volkanovski, whatever the fuck it was. Okay, I didn't watch the fight 45 times. I watched it a few times. And I was trying to figure out like this armbar thing. And I don't know if Anouk can also test this. I don't think she had that armbar in.
That's what Sugiyama said. After the fight, Sugiyama said it was never tight.
Yes, I looked at like on first glance, you might think, oh my God, her arm is going to break. I was watching the way that Sugiyama moved her arm. She was presumably not in any danger. I don't think, and this is also about the third round thing. Had it been a third round, we could have definitely seen, hey, is she even using her arm, because if it was broken or dislocated, she definitely would have been using that arm that they got arm barred to that degree. Yeah. I think Nirvana had the arm bar the first moment that she got the legs under and it kind of had that belly down. But then I think she lost it when she had her legs on Sugiyama's chest. Because it looked like the elbow might have been maybe an inch below the hip. And I think Sugiyama recognized that like if she adjusts or if Nirvana adjusted, then it could be locked on. So that's why she was panicking, not because of the pain, but because like 1 inch or two, like with that adjusting the elbow, then that arm bar could be locked in. I don't think. And then there was like, what was it, Sugiyama? She kind of like rotated, like she was like trying to like escape by like rotating her. And like, if your arm is that way, there's no way that like an arm bar is possibly in. So I don't think, was this a split decision?
It was. It's kind of a weird split decision though. I'll break it down for those that didn't see it. In the tournament fights, there's gonna be 5 judges, and 3 of the judges ruled this fight a draw.
Oh my God.
With
so ridiculous.
2 of them, but they have to pick a winner. And so 2 of the draws picked Nirvana and 1 of the draws picked Sugiyama. But the 2 judges that didn't rule a draw both ruled Sugiyama as the winner. So it was a 3-2 judges decision.
It's so absurd. Like, I'm guessing they must have thought Nirvana won based on that non-existent arm bar. I'll tell you this. Sorry, go ahead.
Based off of as I understand the rules, they're online if anyone else wants to look at them. One of the things the thing they measure the most is like impact. They call it impact. And my theory is that essentially in their eyes, the arm bar was the closest thing to finishing the fight. So that's why, and I think what happened was they scored the first round because Deep Jewels does do round by round scoring. I think they scored the first round for Sugiyama, then they scored the second round for Nirvana, and then they went, this is a draw, but Nirvana was the closest to finishing the fight in our opinion. So she has the most impact with the arm bar. So that's why they gave it to her.
I think that's ridiculous because like, I don't know where the judges are, like how close they are to the cage or like whatever, or But like, yeah, that armbar like was not clearly on. And but the fact that Nirvana could have won by a non-existent armbar, and the fact that the judges thought that like, oh, they both
Mhm.
had like, I guess one, or that Nirvana had one clearly, is that so that's so ridiculous. It's like that listen, if you look at I rewatched the Oliveira Ferguson remember the armbar that Oliveira had on Ferguson. Had that was an armbar. A few more seconds into that and a few more seconds, Ferguson's arm would have snapped like a twig, or if he had not tapped. And like, if you look at that armbar versus what Nirvana had, there's a big clear difference in how they applied. They should not have given it to Nirvana at all. Sugiyama was not in any danger in that moment. Had she adjusted and the armbar was on, then that's a different story. But there was no way that it was absolute. I don't know how they saw that, like how one judge gave it to Nirvana. I find that like baffling.
I assume the judges were all seated in different spots around the cage, and maybe the ones that gave it to her were the ones that had the bad angle. But yeah, after the fight, in the post-fight press conference, Sugiyama proudly showed off her arm, moved it around, said that it wasn't really, there's no pain, that it wasn't really locked on. And the worry I had during the fight was that Deep Jewels, sometimes they have like those technical submissions where the ref will stop a submission if the fighter doesn't tap out, which I like because I think they tend to do that with the younger fighters that may not know when to tap. But I'm glad they didn't do that with this fight, because Sugiyama has been around for a very long time. She knows when her arm's in trouble. And
that's the thing. Yeah. I Sugiyama clearly knew that her arm, she was trying to just get out of position, because if Nirvana had adjusted, then that arm bar is on. And also you don't want to be in a position like that, because if in terms of like dominance versus offensive versus defensive, it is an offensive, by mere process of elimination. So that's why, and also if and had that few more seconds in the round, Sugiyama would have probably got in top position anyway, or at least a more dominant position on Nirvana anyway, because she escaped it the correct way.
Anouk, what do you think of the fight?
I mean, I think Andrew's a bit more knowledgeable about the armbar than I am. To me, it looked like it was pretty tight, but maybe it wasn't. Like from the way looking at it, I thought, oh, this looks like she's in trouble. But to be honest, I also did not expect this to be a draw, so I was pretty surprised. But when you when you broke it down like you did, like with the round system, and then like this looked closest to finishing the fight, that does make sense. So I can see maybe why this was scored the way it was. But just looking at it, like impression wise, like this was totally Sugiyama dominating the fight, apart from her getting into that bad position, which she shouldn't have. But I mean, yeah, like she got out of it, and yeah, so she should have won, and she won. So result wise, things are the way it should have been. But yeah,
I also gotta be happy. Deep wanted Sugiyama. I mean, Deep needed Sugiyama and Rin Nakai to go to the next event. So I think Deep's happy.
Just maybe the topic's a little bit off by me asking this, but like, so like 2 of the fights got canceled. Like I kind of wonder, like, why did they not invite like other flyweight fighters to replace the ones that could not fight, instead of just canceling the fights altogether?
The fights were canceled, but they awarded winners to those fights. So there will be a semifinals. So I think it's Sugiyama, Rin Nakai, Aoi Kuriyama, and TA are going to be in the semifinals. But I agree with you 100%. The poster on the pay-per-view site didn't have Hanakosawa on it. So they knew that Hanakosawa wasn't going to be on it for a while. And I think Kuriyama, I don't know what happened to her. Not Kuriyama. Who was the other fighter that got Shoko, Kago, whatever her name was. The girl that was supposed to fight Tia also dropped out. And I would have liked to have seen them push the fights back and just put them on the April show, or find replacements as well. But
does
Yeah.
Does Deep Jewels, or I guess Deep in general, like when a fighter cancels, do they normally, you know how they like the UFC thing does, like they'll have like 3 or 4 weight divisions in case if somebody cancels, they could just move like the fighters around. Does Deep Jewels or Deep ever like do
Nah,
that type of thing?
no, because I mean the cards normally aren't that deep. Like, like they normally have like they don't have like 15 fight cards is what I'm trying to get at. So they don't have that leeway to kind of move around. I will say after yesterday's like 9-hour one championship extravaganza, I do like the Deep and Deep Jewels. This is a random subject. I do like the length of their events because my wife is a giant Sugiyama fan, so she wanted to come watch this fight. And so she came, and the fact that the event, I think it was like 7 fights, it was almost perfect because she didn't get exhausted from having to sit through a bunch of fights. It reminds me of I dragged her to the Genki Deska card way back in the day. And I was like, well, I hope you like 1 hour long wrestling matches and 20 hours worth of fights because it's going to be a long day. but that's just a random side note. But yeah, I would say that Anouk is right. The tournament just doesn't exist anymore. It seems like it just kind of died because I mean, I feel like they're very clearly, I know they're doing another draw, but I think they're just happy that Sugiyama and Rin Nakai are still in it. They aren't the ones that got injured. But I would have liked to have seen Hanakasawa.
Was this this is also Sugiyama's return after like a bit of a layoff, right? She opened her own gym and all that stuff, right?
She's got a problem. And the problem is that the division really can't, I mean, she's very good. And they have a hard time finding competition for her. They bring in Ao Koriyama and she smashes her. They bring in people and she smashes them. The armbar being the story of this fight overshadows the fact that Sugiyama was dominating 95% of this fight. And the only reason the armbar happened was because she was trying to make the fight exciting.
Exactly. Yeah, totally agree.
Like, she has this pressure on her to make the fight exciting. She wants to deliver an exciting fight for the fans and all of that. And she was going for super aggressive ground and pound the entire fight. It was awesome. And she kind of almost paid for it. But I mean, she was absolutely all over Nirvana. I mean, Nirvana has been fighting for only a couple years, no real martial arts background. I think she was a drummer in a J-pop band. And Sugiyama's got a very long career. Plus, she's married to Keitaro, the king of rear naked chokes. So
I guess the other thing maybe I could just be totally wrong. You know, a lot of, I forget this, especially with more smaller women, that a lot of them are either double jointed or incredibly flexible. So it's entirely possible that, yeah, she had the armbar on, but because Sugiyama is just flexible, double jointed, maybe entirely like didn't feel a thing, or it was like couldn't have been like, it was just like no positional, no danger in that position. Maybe yeah, that's the thing.
I tend to take your side, where I think in the very beginning it was dangerous, and I think Sugiyama got out of it or else I think we would have seen her do more to change the position than just lay there. But once she got the arm out of danger, I think she was like, well, we're stuck here for a second.
It definitely, but it was great seeing Sugiyama fight because she had the two kind of bad losses to Kana Watanabe.
Well,
and it seemed
one of those losses is bullshit, and you know it.
Oh, I know which one. The Yaranoka one are we talking about?
That knockout loss was complete bullshit. That ref dived 30 feet across the ring to stop the fight when she just got knocked down.
I knew you were going to say that one.
That was heartbreaking for Sugiyama.
We got into a big debate on that when that show happened. I thought it was an okay stoppage.
No. Japanese referees, maybe in the UFC as well, but especially with the women's fights, as soon as a woman looks like she's kind of hurt, they dive in to stop it. And I think when you get to the rising level, and when Sugiyama has sacrificed so much to be there, this is like your only chance. I think you got to let that second punch land. What do you think?
Oh no, sorry. Go ahead.
I saw Anouk making a face.
No, I was just still thinking about what you said earlier, like with Sugiyama landing the punches and that getting her into trouble eventually. I'm like, yeah, I actually had the exact same thought. I was like, well, she totally already won this fight. Like, if she was just in for it for winning the fight for the record, then she would just like sat there and done nothing, just kept position. That would have been best, because like all Nirvana had basically left to win the fight was to get a submission in. So, you know, her trying to get punches, even though she already won the fight, basically only decreases her chances of winning. So I thought that was kind of admirable that she still, you know, she showed spirit and she just went for it, even though technically for winning the fight it was not the best strategy probably. But
yeah, I think a lot of these Japanese fighters, especially once they get to that level, they feel like they have to try to finish it and to make it exciting. And so, I mean, Nirvana trains at Imanari's gym, so she trains with one of Andrew's heroes. So I was surprised we didn't see like a rolling heel hook or some Imanari roll attempts come out of her.
I didn't know that because I follow Imanari and a bunch of his guys on Instagram. I've never seen her like on the videos unless my dumb American eyes are like don't recognize Nirvana.
No, she trained she started out, she's from the countryside. She started out training with Kawajiri, and then she moved to Tokyo. Now she trains at AACC, and she trains her jiu-jitsu with Imanari, who it looks like he gives her candy. Like that might be the essence of the relationship. But yeah.
And she also speaks English as well, right? She speaks fluent English.
Yeah, she speaks English, and I tried to get her to do an interview in English, but I think in typical kind of shy fashion, she didn't want to do an interview in English. I think a lot of Japanese people that speak English very well are very self-conscious of their English ability. And you'll be like, "Oh, do you speak English?" And they'll respond in English, "No, I don't speak English." Like they'll like say it with perfect English. Yeah.
You know what the crazy thing about Sugiyama is? Apparently, she was born in New York. I don't know how long she lived in New York, but then she like.
Is that true?
She
I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know if that's true.
I think it is true because she does know English, but like when Drake Riggs on his thing, was it Horizons and Horizons? I'm sorry, I forget.
Broadened Horizons.
Broadened Horizons, yeah. She's trying to speak English, but then I think she's getting like nervous or like she's like thinking too much, and then she has to get translated by Shingo.
I don't know if she's actually born in New York. I think that might be like a character thing that's a layover from her early days.
Really?
I mean, okay. She is, but I do know that, I mean, some of those people like to make stuff up and they make an interesting character. She used to be a teacher and she trained in Australia for a couple of, she went into Australia and trained for a couple of years. And so that's when her English got pretty good. But she speaks English pretty good. I just don't think she ever practices it because she trains all the time and she's a mother as well. So I think she's got her dance card full.
Okay, gotcha.
Let's see. I'm interested now. I know. What does the Wikipedia page say that she's born?
It says New York, New York. So that could mean like that's like that could mean like Albany. She could. I sincerely doubt it, but like it could also mean New York City. Could mean Brooklyn. Could be. It's like It just says New York, New York. I would one day I just want to interview and just find out about her like her New York thing. Kind of like Beinoa was born in California, but then he moved like to Japan when he was like 1 year old. I'm curious to know like Sugiyama's background in New York if it's like legitimate. I feel like it is legitimate.
I think it looks like it probably is legitimate. Yeah, she's been saying New York for a long time. Yeah, so that means possible. But she speaks English very. Let me say, her pronunciation is very good. I just think she's out of practice, and if she practiced at it, I bet she'd be fluent in no time.
But the way like they say like New York, born in New York, that can mean like anything. It's like saying born in Holland. Or born in Japan, where
the reason I was suspicious of it is I know that Vivi May used to say that she was born in America because she would go to press conferences and speak Japanese with a bad accent and play up the whole like I'm a foreigner.
Oh, is this like what's her name? The one who beat Gabby Garcia. What's her name? The one who's Mackenzie Dern doing the whole Brazilian accent.
Her fake Brazilian accent. No, but I think Vivi May just did it to be funny because Vivi May also made an alternate personality for her because she does the Rise ring announcing. And it's DJ May, who she claims is half Mongolian. And so, yeah, she makes up characters. So it all goes back to the pro wrestling days of her, I think.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay.
But it looks like she maybe was born in New York. I'll have to ask her about that next time we interview
her. Please do. Like, if you ever get a full detailed interview of her again, please like find out about her America beginnings. Like, if she would just happen to be born in America when her parents were on vacation, or like she like actually like lived in like New
Interesting,
York.
because doesn't that also give her the? I mean, I don't think it's the case, but she could have become an American citizen then.
Well, she was born in America. Yeah, if she was born in
Yeah.
America, even if her parents were like here on vacation, she would be an American citizen. That
But
that would that yeah.
I would announce that she just renounced that because I don't think I've ever seen it come up.
I'm just surprised that like because I'm just surprised that like that's like a very interesting like backstory considering like how every other like Siwoo Park's from Korea, we know that about her. Every other almost all the other fighters in Deep Jewels that are Japanese are born in Japan, but Sugiyama was born in New York. So I'm really curious, like what's the backstory? You gotta do that. You gotta find out about that one day, CJ.
I will say it's kind of weird. If we're talking about Sugiyama for a second, she's very popular. She has a very popular YouTube channel. She's friends with all the popular YouTubers. When UFC first came to Japan, not the first time, but when they came after a long break, they hired her to do like PR. She would go out and do like YouTube videos where she interviewed people on the street about the UFC. And I think her husband was fighting on the card. And then nothing ever happened of it. I'm just like, she seems like the type of fighter that Rizin or UFC or Bellator should be very interested in. She's a very skilled fighter. Plus, she's very marketable and she speaks English. I just don't understand why those opportunities haven't happened. Seems kind of strange to me.
You said she had children, right? Is that possibly like,
I don't want to. One son.
Is that, I don't know. I know that there used to be the thing where Japanese Joshi pro wrestlers, as soon as they like turned a certain age or they like got married or pregnant, or had a family, you had to retire. You couldn't do anymore. I don't know if that's, she's a little bit older than everybody else. So I don't know if she has if that's like.
It used to be that way in MMA. It still kind of is. In Japanese MMA, a lot of the fighters never talked about like the private life, the female fighters, the fact that they were married or if they had husbands, or if they got married, they retired immediately, or if they had a kid. But I think that some of the fighters refused to accept that. Hitomi Akano was openly married. Her husband was her biggest fan. He came to all of her events and took pictures. Megumi Fuji was married. Got married. And I think Sugiyama, everyone knows that she's been with Keitaro for a very long time. I don't think it ever diminished her popularity or anything. So I don't think that's the case with her.
Here's the other question I have about Sugiyama. Do you think she had beaten Kana Watanabe in Rizin? In either of those, in the first fight, I'll say. Do you think that could have changed the trajectory of her career potentially?
100%. I'm glad you brought that up. I think that her losing the second Kana Watanabe fight is why she hasn't been back in Rizin. And that's why I think she's so hungry for this Rin Nakai fight. I don't think she cares if she becomes the flyweight champion. It means more to her to beat Rin Nakai career-wise. Because beating Rin Nakai, strange. She's got her strange videos. She has a reputation. But you can't deny the fact that she's internationally famous and a well-respected fighter. And if you beat Rin Nakai, that's going to be international news. And she will get offers off of that. I think the Rin Nakai fight is why she's in this tournament.
I see. Okay.
Speaking of which, transition-wise, I'm so good at these. We can go to the Rin Nakai fight. Tell you what, I thought Fujita had her moments. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree.
I got my first impression is like, my God, is Nakai bigger than she's ever been? Like for such a tiny person, what is she like 5'1"? Is she legitimately like 5'1" or like 5'2"? I can't tell what her.
I spoke to her and Usami on the phone last week, and Usami was joking, if flyweight doesn't work, she can do strawweight.
Ha!
How?
She has the height. She's the height of a strawweight. They'd have to cut some muscles off of her body, I think, to get her down to strawweight. But
she is literally just, you ever see like those pictures of like those like cows that are like, I'm not comparing her to a cow. I'm not just first of all, but like those animals that are like so muscular, or like you ever see like the kangaroos? Mm-hmm. She's exactly like that. She like looks just pure thick muscle at this point. I don't know what she was doing in her time off, but clearly it was going to the gym or
that's all. Whatever. That's all she does. All they do is work out all day.
She was not this big in UFC. She did not have the same body type that she did in UFC.
Well, she's smaller now. because she's not a bantamweight anymore. So I think all the fat is gone and all of the muscle is all that is left. But I mean, I was laughing because she and Usami walk around in tracksuits after and before the fights, and it kind of looked like Soviet era athletes. Like they had like the trainer walking behind, and yeah, she's got a terrifying aura to her. I mean, in the post-fight press conference, she was like, I could have finished this fight whenever I wanted. I wanted to work on my striking, so I decided to keep it standing. And then when I decided to take her down, I took her down and ended the fight. I'm like, oh, that's like some Ivan Drago level terrifying comment of I will crush you. I thought her striking looked better than it had before, but it did look like she started to be out of her element. And Fujita, with the karate background in the beginning of the second round into the first, looked like she was landing some good strikes on her. What do you think about it, Andrew? Do you think the striking showed a weakness of Rin Nakai, or?
Listen, I'll say this about Rin Nakai. Like, okay, I haven't followed her career since the beginning, but she's never seemed to be like, even UFC when she was up at bantamweight facing Misha Tate. And I forgot the other.
Leslie Smith.
She never really like was ever. Her chin always seemed to be never like in trouble. She always seemed to like she can take that stuff. And so like here's like karate is only as karate is one of those things that like I think Joe Rogan said it best about like what was it the Steven Seagal.
Don't you dare besmirch karate, but go ahead.
What was it? Steven Seagal said that like Aikido is great if the other person doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. And so like I think I would say karate is almost the same way. Like if you're like a Lyoto Machida or something like that, the highest level of true karate. I don't know what Fujita's background, what type of karate, Kyushin karate or Ryukyu karate or whatever it is, but like the strikes may have hit her, but like they did. If you're counting significant strikes or impact, as Deep called it, it was Rin Nakai who was having the more impact with her strikes. Going all like the face, the body, all that. I did not think that Fujita looked. I have to disagree that she looked as. I don't think she looked as good as. I think Anouk, you said she looked okay. Was that you?
That was me.
Oh, that was you. Sorry. Sorry. And sorry, CJ. I don't think
it was just because I expected it to be smashed immediately. So I think she performed better than I expected, but it seems like that might have just been Rin Nakai's game plan to get some. Because I mean, Rin Nakai hasn't had a serious fight in over 2 years. It's been a long time.
You were also there, right? Were you there live? There. So I'm watching on my phone. I told you I was watching like these fights at work. So like my perspective is a lot different. You were there, like in MMA fights fights are always different in person versus watching them.
Well, I mean, it looked like
video.
It looked like Rin Nakai was doing fine in the striking until she wasn't. It looked like she started to get a little tired and hesitant. But I will say the most significant strike to me was Rin Nakai absolutely blasted Fujita with a body punch that actually like the mouthpiece shot out of Fujita's mouth. And I was like, there is no way that felt good at all because Rin Nakai is so short. That was just like a normal hook for her. And it just absolutely blasted her to the stomach.
I don't know if Nakai has always been a body puncher or if she's like, she's got to include that in her game. She's got the strength for it. She's got to obviously the height for it. If I was her height, I would just do punches to the side of the ribs, the kidneys. Those are sometimes even more impactful than the punches to the head.
I mean, outside of her famed front kick in the UFC, one of my favorite gifts of all time.
Apologies. Yes, also the front kick.
Anouk, what do you think about the fight?
Yeah, I mean, starting with the punches, I don't know so much about karate, so I can't really comment on it. So, I mean, I'm sure Fujita must be strong and her punching must be good because everyone says so. It's not like I've eaten her punches, so I don't know what they actually feel like. But like looking from it, it kind of looked like Nakairin's punches had much more body weight in it. Like she really like moves her whole body to like get the punch in, and then Fujita kind of seemed more like,
it's kind of like that karate point fighting almost.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it yeah, I mean, I don't know if, so like when if you listen to the commentary, I mean it's in Japanese, so like I don't know if how much you, yeah, but like, and so like the what they talked about in the commentary is basically like um how they were impressed at how controlled Nakai Rin seemed to be in her fights. So like you guys were saying before, like maybe it was just her game plan. Maybe she could have finished this earlier, but she was kind of just like trying to get some screen time or you know, because like to me also it seemed like, I mean, Fujita Kyoko or Shoko really stood her ground, I felt.
Mhm.
But it didn't seem to me as if any of the punches really, like I actually I don't really see any moment where she really were Nakai didn't really seem to be in trouble
Mhm.
by Fujita's punches. So maybe she was just like, you know, let's just try some stuff out and see how it happens. And then when I'm done trying stuff out, then okay, now let's finish this.
I mean,
Here's the other thing about
that's gotta be
karate.
it, right?
I'm sorry.
Well, go ahead, Andrew. Go ahead.
I say so. Here's the thing about karate. Karate. Listen, if you ever watch Lyoto Machida and other karate fighters turn MMA fighters, it's not volume striking. It's one strike, move back. You know what? You get in, get out. That's always been like the karate way. That's why you like Ryo Machida is like the people
Well,
who've
the
defeated
highlights was the
him.
Machida Ryan Bader fight, right? That's like the prime example of karate.
Yes, and the way that Machida has been beaten is that the people who beaten him have been like either overwhelmed him or they waited for him to come in and then knock him out with like because
Are you talking about the Shogun 2 fight?
yes. And so so Fujita was doing that, you know, it was kind of like get like a punch in, you know, kick there or whatever. And then also here's the other thing about karate as well. Karate does not emphasize the kickboxing aspect of the leg kicks. That is totally like a non-existent as far as I know about my limited knowledge of karate, but I don't think they teach leg kicks in modern karate. That may be entirely different now. They may have adapted.
Mhm.
But like traditional karate it's if you've seen Karate Kid, you know, it's kicking, you know, it's to the chest, whatever, all that stuff. So
For some reason, I just keep thinking of Andy Hoog as my example of karate, but he was all in K1, so I really can't. He did threw low kicks there, but were those?
Oh, he may have
that
trained.
him
He may have
adapt-
trained it. He may have changed up his whole thing. He may
Yeah,
have
but I think he
started training.
adapted it. I think he adapted to K1. So
Okay,
yeah,
because also here's the other thing: like, how you never seen like all those great karate people from like Benny the Jet Urquidez or Cynthia Rothrock or all those people who were like those 80s like karate stars. They never transitioned or even tried MMA. I know that some of them were a lot older when MMA kind of came around, but I do know that some, like I know Benny Jet Urquidez had the whole thing with the Gracies. That whole thing. If you ever that's a deep dive if you ever want to like just kill some hours, just like wow, this is like shady shit on both sides because there's also the Gracies. But that's the thing about karate is that karate is only as good like it's good if you're great at it. Here's another great guy, you know who's great at, you know, has that thing, MVP. He
well,
kind of does like
I was gonna bring up another set of initials for karate would be GSP.
okay, yeah, that too. But
You know, one of the greatest fighters of all time has a karate background. Andrew, defend yourself.
He adapted to the other aspects of the sport. He wasn't just focusing on karate. He knew wrestling. You know, I would even call him more of a wrestler than a karate guy. I know he wore his karate thing, you know, throughout his career to show respect, but I always considered him more of a wrestler.
100%. I was just being a dick.
Okay.
He became way more of a grappler / boxer than a karate fighter at any point. Because I mean, GSP built his game around a jab and a wonderful takedown.
Yeah. So like, I know that I guess also in women's MMA, karate could be a little bit more successful because the competition or the people that are competing might not have the ability to recognize, you know, the train or defend against that as opposed to like, I guess, men's MMA, which is more developed. That's not saying that the women's MMA Joshi is underdeveloped, but just there's, you know, yeah, especially in Japan. I'll put that in Japan as well. So that I don't, yeah, that's like, you know, with Fujita, like her striking didn't really impress me that much because, yeah, like Anouk said, I thought that Ring Nakai was like definitely impacts. definitely a lot more impact, significant strikes.
Do you?
Also,
Do you
I
know
don't know.
who? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. No,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to change topic a little bit. So
Before we change topic, save your comment. Before we change topic, Andrew, you know that you're Fujita. You know who her brother is.
Is it not the Ironhead Vegeta?
That would be amazing if it was Ironhead Vegeta. I bring him up way too much for a normal person. No, Yamato Fujita, who is fighting your boy Shinryu on the next deep card.
Oh, okay. Wasn't that fight supposed to happen like months ago as well? I felt like that. I heard about that, but then like something happened. And they, I don't know, like one of them got injured or maybe
100% possible. There's too many fights for me to know. I don't remember.
And I still contend to this day that he beat Tenshin in that MMA match. I still contend that if you want to talk about, bullshit decisions, I think he beat Tenshin in their MMA match.
Talking about Fujita,
Fujita. Fujita. I think, and listen, Tenshin hasn't done MMA since. There's a reason why.
Yeah. Okay, Anouk, feel free to change subject. We're rambling about the Fujitas now.
No, I was just wondering. I don't know if we could talk about this, but like about Nakairin, about her size, like, is that all natural muscle? I just can't help but wonder.
That's a good question. It's always when you see someone that muscular, it's always got to be in the back of your head, right?
Yeah, and like I don't know much about her. Like, this is actually the first fight of Nakairin that I've watched because I haven't been in the scene for too long. Yeah. But when I looked at that body, like, I'm like, that's an incredible amount of muscle and a really low body fat percentage for a woman. Plus, then you kind of start to like listen to their voice as well, and you're kind of, well, is this all natural? Like, I feel really bad for saying this, but I just couldn't help but wonder, like.
Well, it's one of those things where there's really no evidence. I mean, it's just speculation because they live on Shikoku. They don't live on Honshu, so they live really far away. They kind of stick to themselves. They don't do a lot of interviews. The only evidence that we have, I guess, is that she fought in the UFC during USADA and seemed to do fine. But we all know that there's ways that what they say those tests are essentially not a drug test, but an intelligence test on whether you can pass drug testing. So, but yeah, I've never heard anything definitive either way, to be honest. Have you heard anything, Andrew? I mean, she looks like she's built like a brick shithouse. Your audio.
I was gonna say she looks like an action figure. You know those old action figures from like the like G.I. Joe or like the old rest WWF action. She looks like a legitimate action figure. It's like you could like turn her arms like this way and all that stuff. Yeah, like
earlier in her career, she wasn't this muscular. If you look back at her days I think she was in. People are gonna rip me apart. I know she was in Valkyrie back in the day. And I think she might have been near the end of Smack Girl, maybe wrong, but she was in Valkyrie, definitely. She wasn't this muscular though, but she is incredibly athletically gifted. I mean, she was one of the best judo players in Japan at her age. And then she blew her knee out her freshman year of college and her judo career ended just like that. And so she was a very high level athlete at one point in time. I mean, she still is, but I mean, she was a very high level amateur athlete. And so she does have athletic gifts, but I mean, she is extremely muscular, but I haven't seen anything to go one way or the other.
No, just wondering, just couldn't help wondering, but yeah. I mean,
I bet they probably have to deal with that question all the time. I didn't ask it because I didn't think they'd want to talk about that question. We can go about that later.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to ask her face to face because I just feel like that's being really rude. But
yeah, no, but it's kind of like back in the day when I interviewed Hiroko after the Chris Cyborg fight. She was like, "Oh yeah, I know Chris Cyborg does steroids." So, but yeah, so.
Do you think that her? So I get, the other thing about Ring Nakai, she's been fighting for a long time, and
since she was 19.
I guess you could almost say it was kind of like surprise she got the UFC offer because you would if you look at her record, it's kind of like, I don't want to say MMA jobbers, but it's mostly people who never really kind of were like.
You're dating yourself, Andrew. You're dating yourself because The reason that she got into the UFC is because Pancrase used to be a UFC factory.
Oh,
If you were a Pancrase champion, that was your first class ticket to the UFC. And she was the first female, I believe she was the first female Pancrase champion. And that punched her ticket because she became a champion, UFC. Shuri Kondo became a champion, next fight, UFC. Vivian became a champion, next fight, UFC. There used to be a thing where if you were a Pancrase champion, especially when Pancrase is on Fight Pass, your next fight was almost guaranteedly in the UFC. I think it might have actually been Pancrase's business model to build up fighters and sell their contracts to the UFC. But
wow, interesting. Okay.
That was an older strategy of theirs back in the day. But so that's how she got into the UFC. I used to tell people all the time, if you're a young female fighter in Japan that wants to be in the UFC, the most tried and true way to get in is become Pancrase champion.
I didn't know that. Okay. Oh, that's what makes that makes a lot of sense though.
Plus, I mean, even though she was only on it for 2 fights, they marketed the hell. There's so many weird like Vice Japan and UFC videos that came out featuring her when they had her fight. She fought Miesha Tate in Japan. So that also plays a big factor because the UFC was trying to market a big UFC event. I think they had Gomi on it. They had Akiyama on it. I think they tried to put a bunch of old Pride stars and do like a Pride style show. And so they had a bunch of Japanese fighters on it. Interesting. Yeah. It's interesting you brought that up though. So let's close it with predictions for the tournament. Do you guys think Sugiyama can beat Nakai? Because Tia is nice, former military, but she made her debut last year. And Kuriyama's already been beat pretty dominantly by Sugiyama. And she's at Andrew's favorite gym, Team Smoker. So we know she's going to have a really good takedown defense going into this fight. She'll be impossible to take down.
My big question. So it's going to be Sugiyama versus her. Is it in Osaka?
Sorry?
Is the fight going to be in Osaka?
No, it'll be at the Korakuen Hall in Tokyo.
Sorry, then Tia has no chance because if you're an Osaka fighter who has tattoos, you get plus 10 endurance, plus 10 health when you fight in Osaka. So unfortunately, nope, it's going to be all Sugiyama.
But do you think Sugiyama beats Nakai? The semifinals and finals will be in the same night.
Oh, they're doing the one night thing. Oh, that's interesting. It's the most interesting fight to make from a stylistic point of view. I would just have to say yes, but the problem is that I think Nakai is a better striker, but I think Sugiyama can easily get Nakai down to the ground, like probably like almost effortlessly. Yeah, like judo background, the whatever. I don't think that's gonna be the case. Sugiyama's dealt with judo fighters probably almost her entire career. Well, then again, she did lose against Kana Watanabe. Now I think about it twice. Not kind of the second fight, the first fight where Kana Watanabe just kind of used that judo. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that Ring Nakai has the same level of judo that Watanabe has. I would say Watanabe's like.
I'm going to challenge you and say that potential wise, Nakai had a higher judo pedigree than Watanabe.
Oh, really? Okay.
When she went into college, I think Nakai was ranked 3rd for her division in the entire country.
Okay.
And she was actually like on her path to be an Olympic hopeful.
Who's Nakai fight next?
It's not decided yet. They're going to do the random lot. They're going to do the lottery system again.
Okay. But Sugiyama versus T is going to.
But I'm going to call it T. Watanabe is the more decorated judo player. I'm just playing devil's advocate and saying Nakai could have been better if her career wasn't cut short.
Gotcha. Oh, maybe in that case, Sugiyama. No, maybe Sugiyama is her Achilles heel is against high level judo fighters. Then again, the way that Nakai fought against Fujita really wasn't. There really wasn't a lot of judo in that fight. It was mainly a striking fight.
According to her, that was by decision. She chose to strike because I will say, we didn't mention this. When she wanted to take it down, she took Fujita down immediately.
Oh yeah,
she got to full mount immediately. I think her little legs and little arms actually make her like very good at passing guard because she has such a little limb to pull out. She got to full mount almost immediately.
Is that because Fujita doesn't have like an extensive
Well, that's
grappling
part of it.
defense. I think that's more that. I think Sugiyama
Yeah.
would like be able to avoid, is the height differential is Sugiyama like 5'5", 5'6", I think.
Sugiyama's gonna be much taller than Nakai.
I mean, that's a very interesting, it's stylistic. I'm very curious to see how that fight goes if it happens. If it doesn't happen though, if Tia does beat Sugiyama, does like Deep Jewels like close down?
No, because it's the same day. They don't have to worry about it.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah. I forgot it's the same day. My bad.
No, but interesting, as Anouk was saying, Sugiyama is also very physically strong. She's very muscular as well. But she's not Nakai Rin level muscular. So it'll be interesting to see. This might be a rare chance where Sugiyama gets kind of muscled around.
Is it 3 rounds, by the way, the final, or is it gonna be 2 rounds? Did they say like what's gonna happen?
I don't know about the finals. I bet the semifinals is 2 rounds, and I wouldn't be surprised if the finals was 3.
I think usually finals are 3 rounds. I think last time it was semi-final 2 and then final 3, I think.
I will say Rin Nakai has an incredibly high finish rate too. I think it's like 67% finish rate. So I don't think any of her fights, if she wins, are going to be decisions.
I'll say the problem with Rin Nakai also is that when she can have a boring fight though. I was there when she had the Murata fight at Rizin, one of the most boring fights I've ever seen until like the finish. Like the audience, I remember the audience got excited, would clap because it was over, not because there was a finish.
It is good that you bring that up. Nakai Rin, I didn't even think of this. I'm very happy you brought this up. Nakai Rin is historically a very slow starter in her fights. She will take way too long to feel a fighter out before she moves. That's historically been her Achilles heel. And that may have been the case in her last fight. She was just a slow starter until she grappled. But yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So that could bite her in the ass in the tournament if she does a slow first round and then isn't able to dominate in the second. It could lead to an upset.
Well, and also, what does that say about the finals? I'm sorry I'm talking so much. Please ask Anouk after I finish this. So, like, what does that say?
Us Americans dominating the conversation, not letting the others in.
Yeah. What does that say about the finals? Like, okay, so presumably, if she wins her first fight against whoever, that's already 2 rounds or whatever. Presumably, she gets into mode and after the first round or whatever. Does the same thing happen after the 3rd round, or does she just kind of like adrenaline dumps? I don't know if she's ever been a part of a tournament. That's the other thing. If she's ever been a part of a tournament, I don't know how she competed well. I'm pretty sure that Sugiyama must have been in more tournaments, or at least has more experience in tournaments. I feel like just because her career, I think, is a little bit more storied.
Their careers mirror each other pretty similarly, actually. Anouk, if you're a fighter, if you're in a tournament situation, do you try to finish the first fight as quick as possible? Or do you try to go through the first fight and not get injured?
I mean, I can't speak from personal experience because amateur women's MMA here in Japan, at least, does not do tournaments. And I don't think there's often tournaments in women's MMA in general here. So I don't know. I can't speak from experience. If it were me, I mean, I'm the kind of person who would just focus on the first fight and not care about the fight after, because, you know, my head can't take that much. Like, I need to focus on one thing, because if I'm fighting someone thinking about the next fight, that's not going to go well for me. But that's just a personal choice.
That's true, though. If you think too much about the next fight, you leave yourself open to not taking the first fight seriously at all.
But I mean, I think if you have the ability to think strategically about how to do this first fight in order to be fittest for the next fight, that's ideal. Just for me personally, I wouldn't be able to do that. But I'm sure there's people out there who can, you know, come up with a game plan to be like, well, this is how we can win the first fight while minimizing the damage for the next fight as well. So if you can do that, that would be best. But for me, I don't think that would work.
I just think of the Rising tournament that happened. I mean, it looked like in the first fight, Kai was taking a very measured approach. Kai was like, it's like mission 1, don't break my hand. And mission 2, don't take a lot of damage. He failed both those missions, but it looks like that's what he was trying to do. Andrew, if you were in a tournament, how do you think the best strategy to go through is?
Well, I guess I could kind of speak from a jujitsu. I don't know. Jujitsu is like a little bit different than MMA.
Are you one of those guys that calls your jiu-jitsu matches fights?
No, I'm not. I'm not.
There are
dork
fights,
like
right? I
that.
mean,
I'm not a dweeb like that. I know there's some like who like whenever there's like a competition at my school, like I have a fight this week. No, you fucking don't. No, you don't. No, you don't at all. But no, it's like I would try to finish as quick as possible.
Mhm.
I know that I'm going to have a break in between, so I could use that to like rejuvenate, get my energy back. I know there's a risk. I might be in the minority that I'm not a fan of the same day. I know if Jay Wolf is here and listening to this, he's going to send me angry messages on
We'll talk about
Twitter.
the superior rule set, and then
Yes.
he'll kill you.
Yeah, the problem is that like I don't like it when fighters go into a fight. Whatever. I want a fighter in. You're never gonna get a fighter who's 100%, but I want him as close to 100%. I always will point to the Floyd Mayweather Manny Pacquiao fight where Pacquiao was like he had the shoulder thing, and it's like we got robbed of maybe the biggest boxing match of all time because Manny Pacquiao went into that fight with a knocked up shoulder. And so I rather have these fighters, not do same day stuff. I don't think that makes it you're not the best or whatever. It's not like, you're the top if you defeat everybody in one sitting. It just means more miles, more potential damage for yourself, especially in Rising. We saw like you said, Kai broke his hand in almost I think every fight.
Yeah.
So it's that to me is an issue. And also it also brings up the issue of as well, hey, like with the cozy kickboxing thing, you have an accidental headbutt. What do you do with that? Now you have like a no.
Don't throw the word accidental headbutt around as if that was an accident.
Just my apologies.
Headbutt.
My apologies. That was on Wikipedia as a no
he
contest.
He is to headbutts what John Jones is to eye pokes.
So yeah, the whole 1 day thing. I think I have no problem. Like if they did if Deep Jewels, if they did semifinals, Kurikan Hall Friday or then Saturday next day, I think that's fine. A day of rest, and even
I think that's even worse. I think having the day in between actually gives the time for the injuries to swell and for we could actually make them in even worse shape. All the adrenaline would be gone. They'd be limping back to their hotel room.
I could be entirely. I don't know what most fighters think. With if there's a featherweight tournament and I haven't talked to any of the fighters or anything. I also might try to talk to Damian Brown for the next Rizin show since if we do. I'd like to know what he thinks about that if he's ever been involved with that. It's just it's something that I'm very. It sucks. You don't want fighters to go into a fight all beat up. With tape around their legs and ankles and arms. You don't want them to look like a mummy. And they're like moving.
The best example of that would actually not be an MMA. It's the K1 tournament that Overeem won.
Yeah.
Where Overeem fought Gokhan Saki, who went into the fight with a broken arm.
Yeah.
From his previous fight. And then he fought Peter Arts, who went through a war with Semi Schilt. And was actually legitimately, his face was super messed up before he even started the Overeem fight. So, that's the example of, that tournament was awesome, but it's also like the poster child of people get injured in these fights and aren't fighting at 100%. And it leads to weird fights that probably would have gone differently. The fact that Gokhan Saki fought for one arm is insane to me, but
I think also kickboxing might be a little bit different than MMA because, MMA, listen, if your arm is gone, can't do takedown defense or not as good takedown defense. You can't get submissions in properly.
MMA wise, just go back to the Dream tournament that got ruined because Eddie Alvarez's eye swelled shut. That tournament was absolutely nuts. And if they would have spaced it out a little more, maybe Eddie Alvarez could have made it farther in the tournament. But he had the war with Hansen and then the war with Kawajiri. I would have liked to see him in the finals. He earned a spot in the finals, but just not in the same night that eye swelled shut.
Yeah, so that's just my thoughts. I don't like it, and also it's very taxing on a fighter to fight twice in one night. Even because if let's say if like you get into like a 3-round brawl, you still win, you're still gonna be loopy for at least. That's why I think the day in between might help, or 2 days. Well,
I think the way to do it would be how Rizin did it before, where they had the one day between.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Heavyweight tournament.
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of like a good middle ground. I'm not this bloodthirsty r/MMA like horrible human being who wants to see these fighters
I've seen your bleed. Just bleed tattoo. You have that just bleed written across your chest. what was the famous guy from Tough? What'd he say? Just let me bang, bro.
Yeah, just let me bang. Yeah.
Anouk, did you ever? That's probably way before your time, but yeah. I think a fighter got kicked out of the Ultimate Fighter house for being injured, and he was like crying, and he just kept saying, "Just let me bang, bro. Just let me bang." God. But what do you think about these tournaments? Well, it's we've been talking for a little over 2 hours now. Don't want to talk everyone's ears off. So, Andrew, give me your plugs.
Yeah, so I am one half of the We Are Rizin podcast. We cover Rizin, shoot fighting with like Josh Barnett's Bloodsport. We cover a little bit of pro wrestling. We try to cover Pancrase Deep, Jules Deep, anything that's like easily Rise. We try, if it's accessible to people outside Japan and not geo-blocked, then we will cover it. If you were geo-blocking your shit, then I have no time for a VPN. That's just my philosophy. How do
you have the time to watch this stuff? You said you watched these fights 4 times.
I'm watching them at work. I'm at work, like in between, like whatever. I'm just like going back, rewinding all that stuff. Like right now, I'm watching the Art of Jiu-Jitsu. That that art challenge thing. Yeah. That I have that on like casting to my television right now because I bought both shows because I'm a fucking weirdo, and now I have to watch the One FC show, One X. By this week, because if I don't, then I'm gonna start getting spoilers probably by like tomorrow when like all the articles.
I've had to bite my tongue, but keep going. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off during your mid.
Twitter at We Are Rizin Pod. My co-host Chris Gary 92. My personal one Abe Benja 1. And let's see. YouTube channel We Are Rizin Podcast.
This Chris, he also has the Focus Fights as well, right?
Oh yes, yeah. I apologize. Yeah, he also has Focus Fights that also covers everything much more than we do.
And Anouk, do you have anything you want to plug? First off, before you do that, give us a quick status update on your knee.
Oh, my knee is well, you still see the scar a bit, but it's healing pretty well. It's going to take a little bit more time because how to say ACL, it's basically the knee itself is more or less healed, but like my muscle strength is only like 50% of my right leg right now. So in this state, I can't do any sports right now because you're going to injure it again. So that's going to take the most time from now on. So maybe by September, I hope to be back to having a fight. But
itching to be back. So you will be back in the ring, and
I do plan on.
Expect to see Ishiwatari or somebody in your corner.
Well, I don't usually train with Ishiwatari-san yet because he trains the pros. So Nagai-san's going to be in my corner. Okay. I hope. Yeah.
Solid gym over there, though. They got a bunch of good fighters.
Yeah, like all these new people coming in, like what's his name? Hiramoto Ren also now trains with Ishiwatari-san. And like,
oh, really? That's good. I do a podcast with his manager, so I get to hear lots of fun Ren stories.
Oh.
But do you have anything you want to plug? Do you want to do your Twitter or your Instagram or anything?
I don't usually post so much about Kakutogi, but like you can usually find me on Firefox, which is PHAIAFOX on Instagram or Twitter. I try to post some stuff nowadays.
Well, it seems like most of your posts are just about life in Japan, which people might be interested in.
About food.
Yeah, that's the best part about being in Japan is the food.
Yes.
CJ, I apologize. I also forgot to plug. I also write for MMA Sucka, and I usually do the Rizin and occasionally Bellator stuff as well. So, but it's it's always random whenever I'm doing that. So, it's occasionally for MMA Sucka.
I've had to bite my tongue so much about the one championship. I normally wouldn't want to talk about it, but There are
If
things
I
want
take,
to
I'll take off. I'll take off my
No, no, no,
earphones
no.
if you.
No, the only reason I want to talk about it is because you put it in my mind by saying don't talk about it. And so now it's just sitting there. But I do a podcast with Shu Hirata. We have a new episode coming out tomorrow. He got delayed because he was traveling, because he travels with his fighters. And a lot to talk about. Talk about Pancrase 326, talk about Rising's next show, the last show. He's Ren Hitamoto's manager, so we'll have some insight on that. Probably talk about, I interviewed Rin Nakai recently, might talk about setting that up as well. And yeah, I also write for my website, Sogo Dash, and you guys are on my YouTube channel, but I write for my website as well. And yeah, thanks to you all for being on. This is my first time streaming this, so hopefully we can do it again another if you have another good show.
It was nice to be part of it. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, this is cool, man. This is really cool.
Well, Anouk, you're kind of a rarity. You're probably the best English-speaking deep fighter.
Oh, maybe, arguably, yes.
I think what the other person that I've met was, do you know Zach?
Zach.
He was a guy for Deep. He had surgery recently. I think they removed.
Oh,
him.
is he the DJ guy or like? Oh no,
No,
he's
he
like
fought,
no,
fought DJ Marco. What's the guy named DJ Marco?
yeah,
He
DJ
fought
Marco.
DJ
That was it,
Marco. Yeah.
I mean, I could be the best English-speaking deep jewels.
See, there you go. There you go. You're our inside eye into the deep jewels world. Cool. Well, we will do this again. And thanks everyone for listening. Bye.
Thank you.
Let me turn this off. All right, we're done.